Elliotte Friedman drops a massive bombshell on the JT Miller trade, revealing a ridiculous trade package for him. And we're going to break it all down for you guys coming up on this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we get into it, we got to say we're on the road for 10,000 subscribers. We're just about a couple of hundred away. So if you're not subscribed already, you want to help us get us to that massive goal of 10,000 subscribers. We'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button. But with that said, guys, we can't waste any time here because this is some crazy stuff that dropped today about JT Miller. Last night, we didn't know if JT Miller was going to play, if he was going to be traded. There was a lot going on surrounding the situation, but at the end of it, as the dust cleared right before the game, Elliotte Friedman dropped this bombshell saying the Miller trade was very close, but something happened and he will play. And we also got a couple of quotes from him during this time throughout the night. He said there was a certain point where it definitely looked like he wasn't going to play. And he also said that the talks were progressing on a trade between the New York Rangers and the Vancouver Canucks for this guy. And Mark, I mean, this was a crazy situation last night. After almost being held out of the game, he goes out, gets 2 assists in the game as well to kind of be like, hey, you want to keep me around here. But this is a crazy situation to the point where before puck drop, we didn't know if this guy was going to play or not.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with this is we've seen reports coming out. The feud between him and Petey seems like one of them were on their way out. We got a report that Petey said he wants to stay with the Canucks. There was a report that came out that Miller did not request a trade, but this is the first time we got a report from an insider saying, hey, the Canucks are actively looking to move him. They want to move on from him. It came to the point where a trade almost happened, which we will talk about later on. But the biggest thing with this is we haven't got this concrete of a report from anyone yet, to the point of saying, like we said, they're going to move on from him. This is the point. A trade is imminent. It's going to happen at some point. We've seen Canucks media kind of putting it out there that a trade's on the horizon, but it's going to happen. They're looking to change up the locker room. They're looking to get a change of scenery for them and for Miller themselves. This is going to be quite a massive trade, and I'm going to kind of throw it back to you in a second, Casey. But looking at this, is this something that you could see kind of unfold within the next maybe week or less?
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of teams interested in this, and just seeing that there's a trade that close to a point where a guy almost gets hauled out of the lineup moments before puck drop. I think that's going to be big for other GMs that were in on him to kind of be like, hey, this almost happened. We kind of need to get our act together if we want to bring this guy in for our playoff push. So I think this trade is going to be very imminent. I think we're going to see this with over the next week. I would put the timeline on this, just seeing how close of a trade this was. And I mean, looking at what the package was in return for JT Miller for Vancouver would have been an absolute steal. It was looking like they were going to have Alexis Lafreniere and Braden Schneider come to Vancouver in return for JT Miller. And Darius, I mean, that is a crazy amount to give up for JT Miller, a guy who, bringing him in, I don't think wins you a Stanley Cup.
I don't know if JT Miller, he certainly makes the Rangers a lot better, right? Like a lot better. The matchup game, all of that you mentioned off the top, like he was playing against Connor McDavid. He's always playing against the best competition, and he's playing well against the competition. But obviously, things I think have reached the point of no return in Vancouver. They made their decision. It's going to be JT Miller on his way out, right? I also think an underrated part of this entire saga is this trade, which I think is coming down this week, like you mentioned, will set the trade market for every other team. I think every other team is waiting to make a trade because they want to see what happens with this one and what is given up for JT Miller. Now, on the Rangers side, as reported, it was looking like, we know Braden Schneider is highly sought after by the Vancouver Canucks, right? So it was looking like it's either him and, plus something else. And there was a report last night, like you brought up, that it's, it could have been Lafreniere and him, which is insane. If you're Chris Drury and you make that trade, Rangers fans will never forgive you. That is an insane trade. Now, with that being said, this might come off as a surprise for outsiders, even Rangers fans. I do that trade if it's just Lafreniere. I would do that trade for JT Miller. I think he's a 100-point player. He's a dog on the puck. He plays against the best competition. You instantly get a first-line center again. You know what you have in JT Miller. He used to play for the Rangers as well. So I would do that trade for Lafreniere. I would not do it for Braden Schneider. This guy, I think, has potential to be a #1 defenseman in this league. A lot of people forget he's still so young. He was only drafted in 2020. He's already gone to 2 conference finals. He's only going to get better. He is their best defenseman right now. All the advanced analytics say so. Whoever plays with him is having a great season. Right now, it's Vakanainen. So whoever plays with this guy is the best defensive pairing, essentially, on the New York Rangers. So you can't give this guy up. But it is getting very interesting, because it looks like it's coming to a head, and it sounds like he wants to go to the Rangers. But again, if that's what the trade package is, I'm not sure the Rangers can do it. But again, it sounds like Chris Drury will do whatever he can to acquire this player.
Hey, this is just classic New York sports. I mean, we see this all the time, whether it's the Knicks, whether it's the Rangers. They trade their entire future away to try to go out and win a championship. It's just how it's been in New York. They're the mecca of sports in the United States, and they always want to have a team in the mix. And, you know, this team isn't bad. They have Igor Shesterkin, who is arguably one of the top goaltenders in the NHL. I think he is one of the top goaltenders in the NHL. They have, you know, guys there like Mika Zibanejad, who, yes, he has had a down year, but they do have a lot of good talent in New York. And bringing in a 31-year-old JT Miller, yes, like you said, it immediately makes them better. They have, you know, a guy who's an established player. He has 31 points on the year right now. He's almost a point-per-game player. It obviously makes them better. But trading away Laff, trading away Schneider just gets rid of their entire future. And, you know, to the point where once these guys, you know, are getting up there and are almost close to retiring, they're going to have 5 bad years of a rebuild. So do you really want to risk that by getting rid of 2 of your younger guys per going out and winning a Stanley Cup and trading for a guy who I don't think gets you there? I don't think you do. Like you said, if this is just Laff, it makes sense. Laff has been through struggles, but he has looked good recently, so he would immediately come in and make the Vancouver Canucks better. But Mark, what do you think? What do you think about this trade for Vancouver?
I mean, looking at this, I think the biggest thing is Patrick Allvin knows how good of a player JT Miller has been. We've seen him hit 99 points just a few years ago. He hit over 100 points just last season. This year has been rocky for the entire team after making it to the second round against the Edmonton Oilers, pushing Game 7 without their starting goaltender, without Brock Besser, their leading goal scorer. They know how good this core can be, but it seems like JT Miller's time is up with this team. I think Allvin knows the bidding war, and we talked about this, Darius, in a video a few days ago. There's going to be a bidding war. The New York Rangers are in on Miller. We see the New York Rangers almost completing a trade. I think they know their worth. They know how much this player is worth on the open market. So I think it's going to start with someone like Schneider, someone like Laff. I think it's going to be one of these guys plus something. It does seem like Schneider is the more untouchable one. He's on a 2-year deal at $2.2 million, I think. RFA at the end of it. Slav signed his extension until 2032. Correct me if I'm wrong. But looking at these two guys, it's going to cost this. The biggest thing with the Rangers and what makes it seem like the perfect destination and why I still think a trade's going to happen, they have so much cap space. We've seen them move on from someone like Trouba. They have about 22 million going into deadline. They can make this happen without having to move on from big pieces to match the contract of JT Miller. So I do think the Canucks are going to continue this. It does get interesting because we know they're actively looking for another defenseman to add to this back, and that's been the worst part of their season so far this year. But they've also came out, we've seen Rutherford, we've seen Allvin say, if we're moving Miller, we want a center in return. So looking at this, I'll throw it to you, Darius. Is there someone on this team that could maybe fill both needs? Maybe Schneider and a center. I know Zibanejad's name has been thrown around, but it seems like he's quite content in New York. New York fans might not be content with him, but it seems like you guys are keeping him. If you were going to move out one of these guys and attach maybe a center to Laff or defenseman, what would be an ideal trade coming the other way?
Ideally, if you're a Rangers fan, it's Mika Zibanejad, but it sounds like they've exhausted that route already. Like back in October, it sounded like they were trying to get that deal done and it fell through. And again, for JT Miller, I think a lot of, sometimes when it's your team involved, you lose sight of things, right? And you're like, hey, you know what? We can trade Gabe Perreault and just be done with it and clean our hands with it and get a player like JT Miller. He's an impact player. He will immediately make your team better, and he's still relatively young. He's 32. The contract might age poorly. But again, if it's Lafreniere and a draft pick, I would do that trade. I don't think that's the case because I think that JT Miller he hit 100 points last year, right? Like this is a guy who would make an immediate impact and can bring you to the playoffs because the Rangers are right there. They're only 3 points back right now. They're still in the race. So I think that the The ask is still very high, and Lafreniere, to be honest, is still a maybe at this point in his career. Like some of the seasons he's had, he looked good last year. He looked good in last year's playoffs. This year, he hasn't been an impact player. He's been okay, right? So he's still a maybe. With JT Miller, you know exactly what you're getting. So I would do that deal if it's that. Again, if you want to throw in, I feel like they want to make Trocheck their captain. I feel like he's not going anywhere in terms of centers. And then, you know, the rest of the way, maybe Philip Hedl, right? Maybe you look at trading him. He's had some injury problems. He's been really good for the Rangers, though. So I feel like you want to hang on to him, but he has had injury problems. So if you're getting a guy like JT Miller in return, maybe you look at that as well. I'm just throwing that out there. I do like Philip Hedl. I think he's a great player, but, you know, they're going to have to look at something. They're going to have to get creative here. And the fact that it fell through yesterday and it looks like they will revisit it tells me that they're exhausting their options at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be done soon. I mean, a lot of GMs want to have these trades done before the Four Nations because there could be a lot of injuries that arise. We don't want to see that happen, but it is a part of the game, and it is a part of going out and putting your nation's crest on your chest. You're going to go out there and do everything you can, and I think getting this trade done before then is crucial. I think before even the end of the week is crucial on the Rangers side of things, because if they can't put something together by the end of this week, he might go to a New Jersey Devils. He might go to another contending team, and you really want to risk losing him for the sake of a draft pick or whatever it may be to sweeten the deal for the Vancouver Canucks here. But it's definitely going to be an interesting situation to follow over the next little while. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this trade. Do you think they should have went through with what they had right now, or what do you think they need to add or take away for this trade to go through? We'd love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we're almost at 10K, so if you're not subscribed, you want to stay up to date on the latest NHL news and the Four Nations tournaments coming up. We're going to have everything covered on that as well, so you're not going to want to miss everything we got coming up here on the channel. But as always, I've been your host, Casey, alongside my co-hosts, Mark Pye and Darius Domingues. We'll catch you in the next one.